Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Hi, everybody. Hey, Mel, what's going on?
I'm just hanging out in my cave.
Yeah, during the apocalypse.
Yeah, living my dream. Yesterday, I didn't leave my room the whole day except to go to the bathroom.
Oh my gosh, my tank of gas has been lasting for like 3 weeks now. I have not had to get any new gas. It's been kind of crazy.
That's awesome. I wouldn't know.
Well, today we have a special guest on our podcast. We reached out and asked anybody who wanted to be on our podcast if they wanted to join us. And today we have a special guest named Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
Welcome.
It's really exciting.
I want to know because Mel I kind of got to see how you guys came together and met each other, but you guys have some, what would you call it, coincidences in how you guys met. So tell us about that. I don't know what they are, but
well, we were supposed to meet.
We were supposed to get together before, the coronavirus apocalypse happened. So when I found out that the show that Mel was working on in New York was playing out of town at Bucks County Playhouse, I reached out because I live like 15 minutes from Bucks County Playhouse, and I actually did shows there when I was in high school. I was in three main stage productions and a bunch of children's productions, and my brother was in 4 main stage productions. In fact, he was in Oliver. My brother was in Oliver with the original adult Simba on Broadway, like when this guy was 18. And both of us were in shows with one of the founding members of Naked Boys Singing.
But that was just your first coincidence, right?
Not the Naked Boy singing part, but
No.
yeah. The story is, I believe, Rebecca, you reached out on Facebook or something, right?
Yeah.
And you said that you heard that I was going to be in New Hope. And so we had planned to meet, sort of. Like, we had finally started communicating, and I got through tech, which Rebecca knows is crazy since she's done shows before.
We call it Hell Week for a reason.
Yes. And so, unfortunately, of course, my show opened and closed the same night, which was still at the end of the tech process, and then I had to get out of New Hope. So we never ended up meeting. So we're meeting now via Skype. I'm super excited.
For the first time.
Yay! So thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us. We're excited to have you, our very, very first guest ever.
Yay!
Ever.
No, it's when you asked if I wanted to be, I was like, oh my God, I would be honored to be a member of your podcast for a day. That'd be awesome.
Thank you. We're a little wacky, so
that's perfect. I love wacky. I mean, like, you were when I started thinking about podcast for widows, specifically young widows, because it's different. You guys know it's very different. You guys were the first one that I came across, and you were pretty new into your podcast, and I was like, oh my God, they get it. They get it. And it helped a lot, especially your the one that I found, two that I found super helpful was the one, how to help others who are going through grief, like how to be grief adjacent. And the headstone episodes were like spot on for me. So it helped me have, I went in with an expectation like that, okay, I might get all these books and I might have to look at all these images. Fortunately, where I went, they didn't do that, but I was prepared for it. And I know that, because I'm on a couple of widow groups in Facebook, and, some of them really were overwhelmed. And I was like, okay, you need to listen to this episode of this podcast. It will help you. So thank you for what you guys have been doing. It's been a huge, huge support.
Cool. We got to back up like 12 steps. Because we never introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm Anita.
Oh, I'm Mel. And this is Rebecca.
And we're just three young widows trying to figure out widow now.
No.
Good job. We threw that in. We didn't tell Rebecca she had to be part of the intro, so.
She has great improv skills,
So, Rebecca, why don't you just give us a quick rundown of who you are and kind of your backstory, and maybe a little bit about your husband and you, and just kind of let us know your story a little bit.
Okay, so I'm Rebecca. I'm 41. I'm a Jersey girl, and I met my husband a little over 5 years ago. We met on an app called Coffee Meets Bagel. I was actually his very first match on it. And when we went on our first date, we had to wait like 2 weeks because the weekend after we met, we both had obligations that we couldn't cancel. And this was the first time in years that I wasn't already annoyed by a guy before we went on the first date. Like, he hadn't said anything or done anything to like pre-piss me off. So he already had like a great a great start. And then not only did he feed me, because I had a couple of dates where like, hey, let's meet at this restaurant around dinner time. And then we had a drink and they left, and I was like, but I put on Spanx and you're not even feeding me. Like that's awesome. And he came in like a button-up shirt and like real pants, and there was like no elastic on anything he was wearing except, I guess, underwear, which was also another, tick in his favor, because I've also had the guy show up in sweatpants.
What?
Dating's hard.
I feel like your bar was very low so far. So.
Oh no, like at one point a friend of mine was like, so what are you looking for in a guy? I'm like, well, it'd be nice if he had a job.
Yeah. That's kind of like how it is these days.
Yeah. And especially this was during like the last recession, like late 2000s, when like gas prices were like $5, and if he had like a discount gas card, that would also help my hour-and-a-half commute to work. So yeah. And he was like, our first date was a disaster. We had to wait forever, and then when we got to the table, there was it was like the half booth, half chair type table, and there was no chair, and it took another 20 minutes to get a chair, but like the conversation never stopped. And he thought I was never going to talk to him again because this date was awful, but like it was just he was amazing. Like, I might cry, I'm having a rough week with it coming up on Easter, but you couldn't help but love him. Like, everybody who ever met him loved him. Like, even his doctors were like, when he passed, were like, we can't believe it. Like, one of his doctors had to wait the whole weekend and call me on Monday because he had to get his emotions under control, because he had to, before he could talk to me, because Rob was just that person. Like, he had an effect on everybody he met, and everybody loved him. He was a chiropractor, so he was also a healer, which was great because I have, like, you know, I have psoriatic arthritis and all sorts of other things. So, you know, he fixed me, but, you know, since he got sick and then he passed away, my body did not adjust well to the not having regular.
Like, no pun intended, right? It did not adjust.
I have to make sure I go every week. Otherwise, like, my body just doesn't work right. But so we got married in 2016. We met January 2015. We got engaged November 2015 because, you know, we were both in our late 30s, and it was like, when you know. And we're not, you know, 20-year-old kids who have, like, forever. So, like, let's do this. We got married exactly 1 week shy of our 1-year engagement anniversary. And 10 days before our first wedding anniversary, he was diagnosed with a rare aggressive form of Hodgkin's lymphoma. That then converted to the most common form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but still extremely aggressive. In 25 months, he went through 10 completely different treatments, including a CAR T-cell treatment that didn't work last March 2019. And then he was supposed to go in for a bone marrow transplant, and before he could get the bone marrow transplant, the cancer started to come back. Like, he was never fully in remission, but it was at a point where, okay, we'll just do a little radiation, it'll knock it out, and we'll get you right in. It came back too fast, so they had to do these 2 rounds of, like, super, super aggressive chemo, which just weakened him immensely. Like, he had such neuropathy in his legs after that he'd be standing and then he'd be on the ground. Wasn't dizzy, wasn't anything, just legs gave out. And he was super weak. He went in for his bone marrow transplant. He actually had his bone marrow transplant on his 40th birthday. And
happy birthday!
Yeah. He had some complications, but not complications. He had some side effects, but they were all normal side effects that you get from a bone marrow transplant. The only thing he had increased was some confusion. But they're finding that, because this is all kind of like new territory with the CAR T-cell treatments, they were finding that people who had the CAR T-cell treatment and then had the bone marrow transplant had some increased confusion, but that it would resolve itself, you know, over time. And, you know, I was staying Saturday night into Sunday nights. And I was going up Tuesdays and Thursdays to see him. And those other days I was home doing his laundry, getting the house, you know, scrubbed and put so that when he came home, it was completely disinfected and everything like that. And the day before Thanksgiving, he was calling me a lot and he was agitated, but no more agitated than like nothing that made me suspect. And I even checked with his nurses and nothing was suspect. And I talked to him about 10:30. We FaceTimed and I went to bed because, you know, my family and I were going to go up and see him on Thanksgiving, and have, you know, spend some time with him. And at 12:45, my phone rang and it was a hospital and it was the rapid response team. And they told me that, you know, he had coded and they were performing CPR, and if I could get there. So I jumped out of bed, threw on clothes, called my mom at the time, and I told her what's happening. She's like, I will be right there. You're not going alone. Drove the hour to the hospital he was in. And when I got there and I rounded the corner to go to his room, the doctor was standing outside his room, and I knew at that point. And, you know, he said, I'm very sorry. We worked on him for half an hour, and we couldn't get him back. And half an hour is a long time to work on somebody. They don't normally work on somebody that long. And you know, like you guys said, you don't, like in the movies and the TV shows, they show you like the hysterics, and like it was just like a full body numb sensation. Like I got really warm and then really numb, and I was just like, okay. They got me a chair, and the nurse explained what happened. She was actually in the room with him. He was getting a breathing treatment because, you know, one of the side effects is that you can just have some trouble breathing. So basically like it was a nebulizer treatment. And she was in there with him for about a half an hour and they, you know, they were talking and joking, and he was fine. And she left the room for not even 5 minutes to get more of his medications. And when she left the room, he was sitting up in bed talking to her, no problem. And when she came back in, his head was back and his heart had stopped. So what I've told everybody is that he did not give up, but his body gave out. Mm-hmm. And I found myself on as of 12:58 a.m. Thanksgiving morning, I was a widow at 41. At 40, I hadn't turned 41 yet. And it was, you know, like, you know, numb. The hospital was great. They let me have as much time with him as I needed to. The funeral director was amazing. Sorry. You know,
sorry. You should cry because we have no feelings.
Yeah, he's actually still in contact with me, and he checks on me, especially with everything going on. You know, but it's just like, you know, here I am, 41. We never got a chance to start a family because he was diagnosed, you know, just so soon after us getting married. He actually started showing symptoms on a cruise. So we started our journey with this, with the symptoms having to get off the boat in Canada and navigate Canadian medicine, which is so different. But just, it's just it's so weird. Like, and it sucks. And I've looked for a different word. You know, I'm an English teacher, and I've looked for a different word to replace sucks, but there isn't one. Like, this whole situation just sucks. And, you know, I'm not the person who's like, you know, why me and things like that, but it's, you know, I tried to find a little bit of meaning behind it, and it's just so weird to find yourself, you know, and I've dealt with a lot of grief in my life. You know, I've had, my grandmother was buried on my 10th birthday. 3 months later, my godfather passed away. We've had, from the time my husband and I got engaged to the time we got married, our guest list shrank because 11 people died in 10 months.
Whoa.
Like, between our families. So, like, no stranger to grief, but it is so different. I am, I guess, oddly fortunate that I have other young widows in my family. I had a cousin who became a widow at 44, 8 years ago. My uncles who passed away when I was 10, his partner is still in our life. And, you know, he became a widow at, you know, they weren't married because in 1989, you know, there was no gay marriage, but had there been, they would have been. And, you know, he's still in our lives. So he was, you know, a young widower at 36. And, pretty much every generation of both sides of my family has had a young widow in some way, shape, or form. It's a really sucky club.
Yeah.
You guys are in it, but with me, but it still sucks.
I know, right? It's like, it's so great to meet you, except for sorry that we met you because it's because of death.
Right.
So Rebecca, you just mentioned that you've had close family members that have become young widows or widowers. Had that not prepared you because you can't ever really prepare for this, but what did you notice from their experiences that either helped you with what you were then going through, or what were some observations that you had?
Well, the first thing I knew was that I was going to get through it. Like we're not through it. I was going to survive it. That as awful as this is, it's a survivable event. And that was like the first thing that I was like, okay, and I mean, not all of my family members survived it well. My great grandmother dealt with schizophrenia after, my great grandfather passed away at 43 when she was pregnant with her youngest of 6.
Oh,
yeah. Well, this was, 1934, 35. So,
Wow.
No TVs in the bedrooms and no birth control.
Oh man.
And, so she dealt with schizophrenia to the point where my grandmother and my aunt and my youngest uncle on that side of the family were in and out of orphanages because she would have breakdowns and go into a psychiatric hospital for a while and then come back out. And so not everybody in my family has gotten through it well, but everybody has survived it. So I knew I didn't want to be like great grandma, but yeah, I wanted to be more like my Uncle John, who has, eventually thrived in the situation. So that was helpful to have, kind of role models. And when I turned around to them and I was like, I said to them, I'm like, am I right when I say that being a young widow is different? And they're like, no, absolutely. Because we're not just grieving the loss of the person. And not to say that, like, my Uncle Billy, who lost his wife when they were in their 80s, didn't have a significant loss, but they had had a life together. They had had a child. They had had grandchildren together. Not only are we mourning the loss of our spouse, we're also mourning the loss of the life we were going to have with them. So there's like a double whammy there. And they agree that, yes, it's a different type of grief.
And if you are a surviving spouse and you're 80 years old, I mean, common sense tells you don't have the next 90 years or whatever to like grieve. It's going to be maybe, if you're lucky, I don't know, 20. Hopefully they don't live to be 100. Like I wouldn't want to if I were a widow, but so there's a lot of time.
You're totally living to be 100. I am, right?
I know that I am too. It's like going to be the curse of the century, literally. So Rebecca, so your Uncle John, what are some things you can tell us about how he's thrived? How's he doing now? What did you notice like right after your other uncle passed away? Like, can you give us an overview about how he's handled all this?
He's, he still lives with his grief every day. There's not, and I also knew that like the grief doesn't stop. It's not like one day you're like, okay, I'm not grieving my husband anymore or my wife anymore. It's just that you learn to live with the grief. Like you learn to live with any change in your life. And that, life doesn't, and I say this all the time, like my husband's life ended, but mine didn't. And, he would be really pissed at me if I did, if I let my life completely stop. And I saw that with my Uncle John. He stepped in and we're not blood related, but he has come to all our graduations and all the when I directed Jesus Christ Superstar when I was 17, he was my assistant director. He's been there for us through every step of the way. And I just got to see how you can still, I mean, he, at one point he went back to school because he had gotten laid off and got I think an accounting degree, and worked for STS for years. And, he's dated some people in the past, and none of them have really become permanent. But, my Uncle Rudy was the love of his life. And, the closest he found was this one guy who I never got the opportunity to meet because I had just gotten laid off from teaching, and I was working 3 part-time jobs to make ends meet. So I was always at work. But he was a makeup artist, and he's Colombian, and, they lived together, and, my mom and this guy would talk, and, my mom mentioned my Uncle Rudy one time, and he's like, "Oh, I talk to Rudy all the time when I'm cleaning the house." And, I'm like, "Hey, Rudy, how you doing?" This was, that was my uncle who passed away. So that was probably the one that we were all hoping for, but he got a really good job, like, running the Arts Council back in his country of Colombia. So he went back there. But they're still in touch, and, they still talk, but, life still occurs even though your spouse has passed away, and you just got to kind of figure out eventually what you want that to be. And it's a process. Like, I've witnessed that it's a process. So I'm not, rushing myself. Like, at any point in time, I don't say to myself, you should be over this by now, or you shouldn't be crying anymore, because I know that that's not what's going to happen. And actually, I really appreciate, I was watching The Conners last night. I was watching it on my DVR, and they actually had a real conversation about grief and the loss of your spouse. And the guilt that comes with it, because Dan had dated a woman and felt guilty. And he's like, every time I was having fun with her, I felt guilty because I wasn't with your mom. And I'm like, thank God popular culture is finally addressing what actual grief is like, not this fairy tale of, oh, I've met chapter 2 and now everything's great and I don't miss my husband anymore. Like, and it was him and Becky, because Becky's character has lost her spouse because the actor who played him did pass away in real life. And I was just like, I got immediately onto Facebook, and I was like, love that The Conners is having an actual real conversation about what grief is actually like for people, and it's not this fairy tale, everything gets wrapped up in a bow in 30 minutes. So that was fantastic.
That's really nice that that's starting to become part of culture now, because I had no idea.
I have 2 questions. My first question is what's your husband's name? We haven't gotten that yet.
Oh, Robert Thomas Robbins.
Robert. Did you call him Robert or Rob or Robbie or Bob?
I called him Rob. A lot of his friends call him Bobby or Bob Robbins or Bob Show, because he was really into wrestling. So he had like 1,000 nicknames. But, I called him Rob.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions, or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I always like to speak people's names, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because mean that they went away, and people are weird about it sometimes. I don't know, say the person's name because they think it's gonna, spook you or something. I don't know, but okay.
You forgot.
So Robert.
Okay.
Yeah.
I warn everybody, I'm like, I might cry don't take offense. Just hand me a tissue. That's like how I start almost all interactions these days.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. This is just normal.
Like I was the crazy lady crying in ShopRite because I saw that his favorite iced tea, he loved the Arizona green tea. And like right after he passed away, I was in the supermarket. I was like, oh, it's on sale. I need to stock up. And then I was like, oh, I don't. Cue tears in ShopRite. And I'm like, and people are looking at me, and I'm saying to myself, I'm like, I am not the first person to cry in ShopRite. This is not the first time I have cried in ShopRite. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, one of the questions that Mel and I get asked most often is about things that are helpful for somebody who's in the new grief stage. So I'm wondering if you can tell us some things that other people did for you that were really helpful right in the early grief, right after things hit the fan.
I did have a friend who offered to start a meal train. I actually declined that only because it's just me. And I have a lot of food allergies and sensitivities. And I said to her, I really do appreciate that. And she was she was really the one who came through and was like the first one who was like, okay, I have this idea. And I said, I appreciate it. I said, and if I had kids, I would absolutely take you up on it. I said, but it's just me. And that would wind up being a lot of food, especially because in the beginning, I didn't always want to eat.
Right.
Like there was a lot of quesadillas being made.
So basically you were a child for a little while.
Like there was quesadillas made with I have a wheat allergy with the gluten-free tortillas, and a lot of they're just a step up from what I call dorm room nachos, which dorm room nachos are made in the microwave, and it's just chips and grated cheese in the microwave. But because I'm, a very sophisticated woman now, I put them in the toaster oven.
Yeah. Oh, toaster ovens are amazing. So I would eat nachos in the bathtub. So have you ever eaten your nachos in the bathtub? Do you like baths or hate baths?
I like baths, but I do not have a bathtub that is conducive to
nachos. Oh, okay.
A person. Like I have to choose if I want like my lower half or my upper half to be submerged.
You need a hot tub so that you can have you can submerge all the way if you want and have room for the nachos.
Or my dream house has a bathtub where both my knees and my boobs can be wet at the same time.
That is living the dream.
It is. And 2 dishwashers so I never have to put dishes away.
Hey.
Oh, that's a sensitive topic right now because my dishwasher is broken and it makes me want to cry.
Oh, no, that's all.
Gosh.
And I have 4 kids and they use 14,000 cups every single day. So that's what my quarantine has been, is just washing cups all the time. That's all I've been
doing. I have a friend who allows her children 1 cup, and she puts like their name on it. And if you put your cup in the sink, then you have to wash it. Except our littlest one, he's only 5.
We try stuff like that. They don't actually listen to me. No, it's fine though. What else have I got to do? Okay, so meal train was not something that was helpful. Was there anything else that you did find that was helpful?
Yeah, like I had, right after the funeral, because when all the stuff came back from the funeral home, because like the funeral home set up little vignettes that kind of like told about his life. So a lot of stuff came back, and I had one friend who couldn't make it to the funeral, but came up the weekend after because she lives out of state. And, when she came over, she said, okay, she's like, I'm not expecting you, like, I know you're not ready to, like, you don't want to go through this stuff and put it away right now, but let's organize it so you can walk in your living room. And she just helped me kind of like pile it systematically. And then I had another friend who said, and it was the same friend who did the meal train. And, I thought that my husband was just disorganized, but it turns out that he just did not have any sense of organization. So, like when it came to kind of, because, the last, I would say,
out. Go play.
Like the last 8 months, things were so crazy that like trying to keep the house organized
No,
was
really, it's
just
not
like a
funny.
losing
Out.
battle. So like
Go.
another friend and my brother, helped, just kind of get my
Because I'm
house
recording
back
my
into
podcast
order
right
a little bit so that I could live.
I'm sorry, I can't even listen to you because Anita.
Just so you know, this is muted on my.
No, you should have not muted it. It's my favorite. It's the only thing that brings me joy.
But this is like real life motherhood.
Yeah, I love the real life. Okay, Rebecca, ignore Anita and you may continue.
Just keep talking.
And even just the friends who still check in on me and still send me the text message like, hey, how are you doing? Just that little, hey, how are you doing is like, or, one of Rob's good friends. So he loved wrestling. So we would always have his one friend, Danny, over for the pay-per-views. And normally, and I would cook stuff and make stuff. And this one time, I just think it was just a crazy weekend, and I didn't get to do that. And they were hungry, and I was like, "Well, I've got chicken nuggets." And they were like, "Okay, cool." And I'm like, "Okay, do you want regular chicken nuggets or dinosaur?" And they both looked at me like I had 8 heads. These two late 30s men, and they were like, "Dinosaur."
Yes.
I was the stupidest person on the planet, and I'm like, "All right." And as I'm making them, I'm like, duh, always dinosaur.
Duh.
And about a month and a half ago, I get a text message to me, and it's his friend Danny, and it's a tray of dinosaur chicken nuggets. And he goes, when I was food shopping and saw these were on sale, I laughed out loud in the aisle and knew that he was telling me I had to get them. So just little things like that happy memories, we have a Christmas tree. Our Christmas tree, you can change the lighting, and one of the settings is purple. And Rob would turn it to purple and sing, purple tree, purple tree. And my brother, mentioned that this Christmas and was like, that's one of my favorite Christmas memories of him. So just checking in, and people who actually are still celebrating him and who let me know they're celebrating him. I don't care how you celebrate him. And you don't have to every time you think you see an actor on TV and think of him, you don't have to text me, but something like the dinosaur chicken nuggets, that was kind of like a little inside joke for the three of us. Just, it makes me smile, and it makes me happy that he's still living on. And he loved kids, and still getting pictures of because we had a ton of weddings to go to right before and right after we met and then got engaged. I think we went to 8 or 10 weddings in a 18-month time span, including our own. Well, then about a year and a half later, there were 9 baby showers.
Yeah.
So just, getting the pictures of the kids and stuff like that, also is really, and the ones who are letting me know that we're still, even though she's not quite 2 yet, we still talk about Uncle Rob. They're going to know who their Uncle Rob was. And that makes me happy, because then his legacy lives on.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and I love that they keep in touch with you too, because we've all heard stories of people that are not sure what to say or what to do, and that could have been in your life before, and then they may think, well, I don't want to make Rebecca sad, so I'm just going to stop sending pictures, and that makes it worse, right? Because they don't want to trigger somebody. So I love that they're still keeping in contact.
I will say not everybody has kept in contact. The ones that aren't keeping in contact weren't necessarily the best at keeping in contact just in regular life. So I'm not necessarily surprised by it. And I do know that there are some of his friends who were really affected by it. Because it was unexpected. Even though he was going through cancer treatment, they were still talking cure. So this was a completely unexpected sudden death, even though he, it wasn't like he got to end stages of cancer, and they, and if he had to die, I'm thankful that it happened the way it happened, because he never had to deal with I'm sorry, there's nothing more we can do. I was gonna say, he didn't have to make the decision of, you know what, I don't want to do any more treatment. Like those decisions were made for him. And I'm thankful that he didn't have to go through the stress and the trauma of dealing with those things.
So a question that I get all the time, and Mel and I asked each other this question pretty early on, is everybody wants to know if you would rather have a quick sudden death for your spouse, or if you would choose like a cancer death, or a longer, more drawn out death where you kind of had the idea that it might be something that was coming. So Mel and I both had quick sudden deaths, so we have our opinions, but I want to know what your opinion is, which you would choose if you had to choose one of them.
I mean, so this is kind of a weird situation, because every treatment he had, one of the risk factors is death. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like every chemo treatment, like every piece of paper, every consent form that was signed listed one of the possible side effects as death. So although this was sudden and unexpected, it also was not. So
yeah, it was
honestly,
on your radar at least.
I would actually prefer, so we did have conversations about, like, God forbid, this is what I want, which, I'm thankful, because when I was faced with it, I knew the direction to take. I knew where he wanted to be buried. I knew where he, what he wanted. The one thing we did not do at his funeral was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the TV show Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Well, he's a huge, they call themselves Whovians. And I have a working knowledge of Doctor Who, because my circle is the nerdy geek circle to begin with, but I don't actually watch Doctor Who. And what happens is the Doctor regenerates into a new form basically whenever somebody doesn't want to renew their contract, or they don't want to renew somebody's contract. But so that's how this show has spanned like 40 years, and they've had like 13 doctors, because the Doctor regenerates into a new form. And they're wearing the clothes. The first time you see them, they're wearing the clothes of the Doctor before them, and then they take on their own style. So what Rob had said, and he actually told his friend Danny Gata, because they are polar opposites. My husband was a big guy, big teddy bear. Like he always said to me, baby, you got to type. And his friend Danny Gata is about my height. I'm like 5'3" and muscular and skinny, and he works out. So the complete polar opposite of him. And he always said, at my funeral, I want you to dress up in what I was wearing when I died, and run in with a sonic screwdriver and say, it's a lot to explain, but trust me.
Oh my gosh.
But we did not do that, because he was in a hospital gown when he passed, and it was December. And his friend Danny Gata actually called me up and said, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, I don't expect you to. But, even just having that little piece of information, knew that, and he always said, because again, we went to a lot of funerals with everything going on, with all our, relatives dying. And when you're at funerals, you can't help but talk about what you might want at your funeral. And he always said, like, I don't want the depressing music played. I want like Kiss and Billy Joel, because those were his favorites. He's like, I want Always Look on the Bright Side of Life played. So I put it in, the funeral director said, pick out 15 songs. And I made sure I put that one in there. And I put in Heaven's on Fire, and I put in Piano Man, and all those, because that's what he wanted. So I was thankful that we had that conversation. But if I had to choose, I would want it to be more like your spouse's went, where there wasn't the suffering leading up to it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because going through 25 months of cancer treatments it's hell. And so I'm glad that his death, when he did die, he didn't have to go through the end stages of cancer and that suffering and that level of pain. But I also wish that he didn't have to go through it at all.
Your experience is kind of like a hybrid of somebody that does have to get to the point where they're like, okay, I'm stopping treatment, and of the sudden death, right? Because like he was sick and he was getting treatments, but then when he did die, that was unexpected, right?
Exactly.
So you're kind of in the middle of the two extremes, it seems like. Kind of like the crappiest of both. No offense. Is that rude to say? Sorry, Rebecca.
No, it is. I have double crappiness. We never. The thing that really sucks is we never got to be newlyweds. Because one thing I didn't say is 6 months after we got married, I had knee surgery and wound up with pulmonary embolisms. Jeez. Which I survived, but that's a long recovery. It was 6 months before I could walk from the car to the store without getting out of breath, and it was before I didn't Kung Fu Panda walking slowly up the stairs.
Wow. So lots of hard things really consistently. So what does your life look like now?
Well, now we're quarantined, so it looks like everybody else.
Yeah. It looks like it looks on Skype.
So pre-quarantine life, I actually took my doctor put me out of work for about 3 months because my stress level and anxiety was just and my cognitive function was completely lacking. Couldn't form sentences, thank God I have a Keurig. Otherwise, I don't know how I would have gotten coffee into me, and that would have been a tragedy. But yeah, being a teacher, you're in front of a classroom, and I also work in an alternative education setting. So it's, there's security things that have to be, observed in the classroom. And I barely had enough cognitive function some days to get out of bed and to my couch. So my doctor was like, no, we're putting you out of work for 3 months. You need to process this. I did make sure I made it a rule that I had to get out of bed every day. Some of those days I got out of bed and I went to the couch and I stayed on the couch. But I made it a rule that I had to get out of bed every day because I could very easily just stay there. And that's not good for either my mental or physical health. My birthday was 1 day short of a month after he passed away. And having a birthday 2 days after Christmas is sucky to begin with because nobody's ever around. And I think this is the first time since I've been 8 years old that my friends made sure they were around. I made sure that I went and did something on my birthday and I didn't sit home and wallow. I made sure that I went and did something on New Year's Eve because I didn't want to sit home. But also going to my parents' house would have been worse, and I said that to them, no offense. And they're like, none taken. So I have friends who are musicians and actually Rob's favorite band, it's a Billy Joel cover band, was playing that night. And I have known the leader of that band since I'm 16 years old. He did the music when I directed Jesus Christ Superstar. And I know a lot of people there. So I knew that at least 50% of who was going to be at that bar, I know already, just from being around him for the past 20 something years. So I knew, and one of the bartenders is his wife. So I knew she's like, I'll make sure I sit you in my section. And what I didn't know was the owner of the bar became a young widow last year. So we have for my county, we have a group called Ladies of Hunterdon on Facebook. And I went in there around Christmas time and I was like, hey, are there any other young widows in the group? I just lost my husband. I'm only 41 and I'm looking for younger women in the similar situation to connect with. And I got an outpouring of some of it was condolences. Some of it was people who became young widows 20 years ago and wished they had something. And some were young widows. So I wound up starting a young widows group in my county, which was starting to gain a little traction and then quarantine.
Wow.
But
Of course.
I was I was communicating with one person. I saw that we had some friends in common, which isn't uncommon for people to know the musician friends of mine. And when I got there on New Year's Eve, I realized that she's the owner of the bar.
Wow.
And she said, yeah, come find me. And when I went to find her, and I'm like, hi, hi, I'm Rebecca. She gave me this big hug, and she goes, my heart broke for you because I knew exactly what you were looking for when you made that post. So, I'm trying to find my little community and tribe, but, I tried to get out of, some days getting out of the house meant wandering around Walmart,
Yeah.
A couple times my mom had to come get me, like, the Christmas tree fell over around Christmas and I couldn't get it to stand back up, and that just destroyed me. And she came and picked me up and took me to her house, and I helped her wrap presents. And, so, life is just, it's a little lonely. So, right now we're all doing what we shouldn't be doing as relatively new widows, which is isolating and spending large amounts of time alone, especially those of us who, don't have children and roommates.
I don't know what it is. There's no
Life
chargers on my bed anymore.
It, from the outside it looks kind of normal, and I've created new routines for myself and new things I do. But it's, there's lonely, and there's times that I miss him, and there's times that I'm watching TV or I see something on Facebook and I go to show him. He's not sitting there. And, it's a little over 4 months out, and I don't think I'm ever going to get used to him not being there.
It's such a big void, and especially with what you say, his personality is big, and everybody loved him, and he was so well loved. Like, it's an irreplaceable spot. So yeah. So it's been, you just said, over 4 months, right? So it's it's super fresh still.
Yeah, it is. And I have good days and I have bad days and I have everything in between. And I made the choice very early on that I was going to be honest about it. That if I'm having a good day and people say, how are you? I say, today's a good day, or I'm okay. But if I'm struggling and somebody says, how are you doing? I say, I'm struggling today. Because I really do feel like we need to start normalizing grief in our society.
Agreed.
Yes.
And if I'm a one woman force doing it, I'm going to be honest about it. And if I'm crying in the jammy department of Kohl's, which I did 4 times around Christmas time, then that's what I do. And if anybody asks me, I'll be honest. And if anybody gives me a dirty look because they think I'm weird, well, that's their problem, not mine. My husband's dead. Yours is.
You could punch him in the face.
Right?
Do
you ever go around? One thing that I always would do, especially not so much right now because it's less fresh, but I remember just like having to go to the store or go pick up prescriptions or whatever. And, you're always carrying that sadness, and it's like a loop in your head, and you're like, my husband's dead, my husband's dead, my husband's dead. And it's just like, you see people in their normal life, like maybe cut somebody off with a shopping cart or be a jerk or whatever. And for me, I was always ready just to like knee-jerk reaction, say, my husband's dead, leave me alone. Or like, you know what I mean? It's like, it was always on the tip of my tongue because it was so much a loop of in my brain. And it's like, how dare you like stress out over something stupid, like your kid like running down the aisle for like 5 feet, like your husband's not dead, mine's dead.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Wait, I have both of those things.
That's true. Sucker.
Yeah, but I really didn't run into, like, I knew it was going to happen because, I listened to you guys, and I'm on the other widow group, so I knew that people were going to try to like compare things to losing my husband. And, intellectually, when it didn't happen until I went back to work. And intellectually, I knew what they were doing was they were trying to connect with me, and they were trying to reach out to me, and they were trying to tell me that, they were there for me. But I had one coworker who compared her estranged husband, who's a drug addict, to she knows what it's like to lose a spouse because the the man she married is essentially dead.
No.
I didn't even say anything to her. I just looked at her and blinked, but I've never wanted to throat punch somebody more in my life. And then I had another coworker come in partway through a conversation that I was having with another coworker who knew that my husband had passed away. And this was a coworker who came into where I work while I was out, so didn't know me, didn't know the story. And we were just talking about, like, this coworker that knew my husband had passed away asked me how we met, and and I mentioned internet, so we started talking about internet dating. And this coworker came in partway through the conversation and goes, "Well, it couldn't have been that happy of a marriage if you're not together anymore." And I looked at him and I went, "'Cause he died."
Oh.
Oh my god.
And the look on my other coworker's face, who's like this 30-year-old guy, was like, "Oh no, you didn't." And like, intellectually, I understand that people don't see me young and automatically think, "Oh, maybe she's a widow," but I was also raised that you don't assume.
That's too loud. You gotta go.
Yeah, that's
Too loud.
a great.
But yeah, I was like,
thing.
"'Cause he died," and he was like, "Oh wow, I'm sorry."
That's like
And I'm
what
like,
we would say, because he died.
That's so
Die. And it was
you get
kinda
to
like-
though. That's like you're right.
You
Yeah.
earned that.
And the other thing that I realize is that I don't give a F anymore. And it's funny because I always, like, even when I was little, I couldn't wait to like be old and not have a filter anymore and be able to just not care and say what I wanted. Because I mean, I'm a Jersey girl, so I barely have a filter as it is. And now I realize that it had nothing to do with being old. It had everything to do with all those women in my life who are widows.
Wow.
That it's the widow status that makes you like, my husband died. What are you going to do to me? Like,
It's true. And that's how I feel during this pandemic. I wanted to ask you guys your thoughts on this as well. But it's like you hear everybody complaining or being like, we can just make it through. This is such a tragedy. And it is a tragedy. However, the stuff that we have lived through that's been such an assault on like our personal life, it's so much different than this pandemic, which is, again, a tragedy. But for me, it's hard I have to shut off from people that are really overly emotional about, not, of course, there are people dying. That is very tragic. There's that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like, oh no, like I can't go out of my house and like we're quarantined or this and that. And it's like, you guys shut up because of what I've lived through with dead husband, you know what I mean? All the stuff that we've all been through where it's just like, that's such an assault. It's made this pandemic not as big of a deal to me as it is for the other people that have not gone through trauma like we have. And I don't think I worded that correctly, but do you guys kind of know what I'm trying to say?
yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, I think it just gives you a different perspective on what is serious and what's not serious, or
Yeah.
not serious, but what is like tragic and what's not tragic, and what's important and what's not important. I feel like the pandemic has just added on to the layers of awfulness for me.
Well, yeah, you're
'Cause I'm
different.
like,
Sorry.
yeah, people are like, oh my gosh, I hate that I'm homeschooling my 4 kids. And I'm like, I'm homeschooling my 4 kids and there's nobody else, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no husband to pass them off to or to be, but I still have great support and all that kind of stuff. So, but
And
it
then
just
we're
it's a
like,
different
well, we don't have
perspective.
kids because our husbands are dead.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm fortunate because being in the arts, I have a lot of artsy friends who are kind of like artistic introverts to begin with. So like they're all kind of loving the pandemic because they can like
That's Mel.
Yes.
they're like I
love
was FaceTiming with my one friend. She's a filmmaker and she's like she's like, I'm actually learning how to use my DSLR camera because I got
Right.
it and I just like, okay, I need this to take pictures for things.
That's
She's
a
like, but
problem.
I'm actually learning how to use it now.
Right.
What bothers me and what is kind of triggering me is all these people who
No,
are
it's really
complaining
not
about
okay.
being home with their spouses. And I'm like,
Not really, I'm joking.
I would give and not that my husband was annoying, but I would give anything to be annoyed by Rob right now.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I would rather, he had this penchant for leaving drawers open. Like I would rather have my ankles taken out by his bottom drawer of his dresser 100 times a day right now.
Yeah.
Like, and I want to be like, how dare you complain about spending this quality time with your husband that you never would have gotten normally. Like I had my gallbladder out in October, and I was out of work for 2 weeks. And then on the 6th of November, he went into the hospital, and I'm thankful I had to have my gallbladder out, and I got those 2 weeks home with him because, you know, a little over a month later, he was gone. Like, you never know what's going to happen. Like, you need, like, enjoy this time. Enjoy the time that you have with your spouse because it's unexpected. You didn't know you were going to have it. You wouldn't have had it if we didn't have this pandemic, and God forbid something happens. Even if it happens 20, 30, 40 years from now, you had this time together, you know, and you know, just don't complain. At least you have your husband or your wife.
Assuming they're not
spouse.
Abusive, which just
assuming
yes.
they're not abusive. No, I'm absolutely, yes. No, this is for the people who are in non-abusive marriages. And, you know, if you're in a place where your marriage maybe isn't doing great, well, now's a really good time to, you know, see if you can kind of work on that.
So My Favorite Murder produces a podcast by Paul Holes, and Paul Holes was one of the investigators for the Golden State Killer crimes. He's actually responsible for merging the worlds of like the familial DNA, Ancestry.com sort of a thing, into solving the case. There's an episode of Paul Hole's podcast. I think it's called The Fall Line. I can't remember. But they have a whole episode on what do you do if you are quarantined with your abuser? And then they give resources to help you to be able to like safely deal with that or get out or handle it or whatever. So not that anybody listening to a widow podcast is going to have a need for that.
But we might know somebody.
Yeah, but
in
if you
that
guys do,
situation.
if anybody does know, like, keep an eye out for your friends in need and pass along the information. So, yeah. But if you are in a good marriage or like a normal marriage that's not abusive, like, enjoy the time that you have because your person is not dead.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. We have a very important question for you, Rebecca. This is probably the most important question of the whole podcast. Are you ready?
I am.
What is your favorite cheese?
Oh.
And if you don't have one, top 3.
Okay. It has to be a top 3 because I have a favorite hard cheese. I have a favorite soft cheese.
Okay, that's fine.
So I love
Fair
a
enough.
extra sharp, punch you in the back of the throat cheddar.
Nice.
Mhm.
And I love a really good blue cheese.
The stanky.
Like, especially blue cheese in a salad with some like cranberries and like dried cranberries and a balsamic dressing, or whoever came up with the combination of mushrooms, shredded cheese, and blue cheese dressing is a genius.
Huh. I love it.
And I eat toppings only salads. I don't waste time on the lettuce. So, like, I will make a salad that's just, like, bell peppers.
It's a
like-
salad in quotes.
Yeah. It's
That's excellent.
bell peppers and mushrooms and, like, grape tomatoes and cheese. And, like, you put some blue cheese or some ranch dressing on that. And it's just divine.
And bacon.
Nice.
Oh,
You
yes.
forgot the
And yes, bacon. Yes, you're
Mm.
right. Bacon makes everything
Yeah.
better.
So wait, back to the hard cheese, back to the throat punch cheese. Do you have a specific brand you like the Tillamook in the black wrapper, or are there other kinds you can refer us to?
I actually just discovered the Tillamook with the whiskey.
I don't
They have
know
a-
this.
They have a whiskey cheddar
Really?
that's really good.
They don't have that in Utah.
Yeah, Utah probably. It's like not allowed.
You could probably get it in New York, though, and bring it back to Utah.
There you go. I'll mail you some cheese, Anita, if I ever leave my room.
Um,
Don't leave your room.
I won't, though.
but honestly, like, just a good extra sharp cheddar. It doesn't have to be a specific brand. Like, don't give me a mild cheddar. Like, that's just offensive.
Don't waste my time with a mild cheddar.
Don't offend me with your mild cheddar. Yeah. And that's one thing that actually Rob had said to me sometime over the summer. He's like, "You've ruined me." And I go, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You got me loving strong flavors. I can't eat bland food anymore." And I'm like, "Yes, I succeeded."
Your job is done.
Because I come from a family that's part Slovak, part German. So like we we kibasi and we like ham and like we like strong, punch you in the face flavors. And after almost five years, he also learned to love strong, punch you in the face flavors.
I love it. Well, Rebecca, I wish that we could have met Rob. I'm so sorry about him dying. It sucks so bad.
It does.
So sorry that this is how we have come to know each other, but also grateful that you were willing to talk to us. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Anita, do you have anything else you'd like to add or ask or whatever?
No, just thanks, Rebecca, for spending some time with us and giving us your story.
Thanks for having me. And congratulations on your photo shoot.
Ooh, I know. She's looking at me on Skype right now and she can totally see my modeling abilities.
I mean, you do look pretty rad with that headband. Oh,
Yeah.
man. Well, I love that you are, even though the pandemic has interrupted things, I love that you're reaching out and starting kind of your own Young Widow community where you're at. So
That's
it's
awesome.
I mean, have you reached out to them? Like, do you guys do any sort of like Skype or Zoom or anything?
I'm trying to get that going. I posted in our little Facebook group, I guess, last week. I do know that one of them works in healthcare, so she's been a little nuts right now.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So, we'll, even if I can't get like the whole group together, I'm going to try to like at least individually reach out to, because there were 4 of us who were really active. But again, it was pretty new. So, we try to get together once a month. Last time we got together, we did ceramics painting, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh, fun. That's really fun. Hey, I don't know if you know this person, but during the 2 weeks I was in New Hope, there was one of the what is the name of the bar? Also, the one bar that's just outside of the theater. Of course, my friends are musicians, and like I'm a different musician. I get done with work, and I'm like, I'm so tired, I have to go to bed. And they're like, we're done, let's go to the bar. And I'm like, ah. So I like hung out for 5 minutes with them a few times, but it was awesome because there was this guy there, a local guy, and he just came up and was like talking to one of our musician friends that's like also very crazy, and all of a sudden he took his eyeball out. So we call him Eyeball. Yeah, and the guy was like in his mid-20s or early 30s. So we call him Eyeball Guy. So Rebecca, if you run across Eyeball Guy ever, please say hello. I think his name is Jace.
I have heard of him. I have never met him.
Really?
Yeah.
Eyeball Guy.
I've heard of him.
He made really good friends with our orchestrator, and our orchestrator is like amazingly hilarious and like rock star kind of a guy, but like this phenomenal musician with like classical orchestra stuff, and it's very he's very unique. So, oh man, so you might meet Eyeball Guy.
I might once we can get out and go to New Hope again.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
That gives you something to live for. Eyeball Guy.
Yeah.
Eyeball Guy. We're on it.
Yeah, I'm just giving you assignment to go find him. That's it. So
my brother might actually know him, because he spends a little bit more time. I don't want to say my brother doesn't like hang out at bars, but he was doing a little bit more dating than I was more recently, because I was married. So he spent a little bit more time in New Hope, because that's like the place to go, because there's nothing to do in Hunterdon County. It's like farms and housing developments. So
you're on the assignment. It's official.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed getting to know a new voice today and a little bit about her story. And if you guys anybody else wants to reach out, we've got a few people lined up for the next couple of weeks. So shoot us an email if you want to chat with us also during the pandemic, because I mean, what's more fun than this? Do it. Give us give us a call. Call me. Don't call me. Email me. Facebook message, whatever.
Send us an email at widowwedonow@gmail.com.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, and join us next time when we try to figure
Oh, are you serious? It really just cut out.
Oh my god. Ah! I know. I was like,
hey, we should
helping me here.
We should have Rebecca do it since she's our new honorary widow, podcast widow.
Absolutely. She's
not even a real widow.
Honorary widow. She's like a.
I know. You know what I meant. My brain doesn't work. You know.
Oh, widow.
A real widow, but an honorary podcast widow. Okay.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you'll come back next time when we try to figure out
Widow we now.
Wow. Skype delay is real, you guys.
I know, that was a little bit tricky.
This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it, and my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys. Such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.